guys, welcome back to Prep Talk on Prepping in Progress. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite ingredients in food, when used sparingly, which is salt. And my top 5 ways to use salt. So stay with us. Okay guys, so we all do the bullets, band-aids, and beans thing. But how many of us actually stockpile salt or spices? Things to make food more savory. Well, how many of us actually even think about it? This 5-gallon bucket is almost full. It's about full up to here with salt. I like salt in moderation. Tastes great, brings out the flavor in foods. Excellent thing. And they told me in grade school that, the Romans used salt in lieu of currency for feeding or paying their troops. Alright, cool. Well, I decided to do a little more research into the salt thing. And I found out some interesting facts. Did you know that the word celery was derived from salt? It was actually restricted. The owning of salt was actually restricted in ancient times. And you had different methods of getting it. Many involved slave labor, and the Romans used one method where they would actually dig it out of the ground and salt mines. Whereas in Great Britain, or England, the UK, whatever you want to call it, they would take salt water and boil it off to get their salt, which would actually be true sea salt. But part of its ability to, why it was so expensive was that, yes, it would flavor your food, but it would also be used in the preserving of your food. So for a Roman legionnaire or his soldiers in his legion who are on the march, the ability to take raw game that they had killed and preserve it for the march was of high value to them. The earliest recorded usage of salt was 6000 BC in Yuanjin, China. Yes, I have notes, but I just barely looked at them because they're kind of far away. Lake Yongqing in China. But prior to industrialization, you go back and you had, like I said, salt mines or boiling it out of salt water. So you have something valuable as much because of how it was acquired as what it could do. If you go back to the First World War, they discovered that you could make IV fluid by discovering the ratio of salt to put in water. And in a pinch, that's what they would use for the first IVs. So, you even have your cases in the Bible where book of Matthew, I believe, Christ is talking and he says, you are the salt of the earth. But then he goes further and he says, of what value is salt if it has lost its flavor? All it's good for is being thrown out and trodden upon, walked on. Once salt loses its flavor, it is pointless to have it. I love these lids. And what's the point of salt if we don't keep it? Cool, dry place, well taken care of, sealed. You know, when we first started prepping, I never would have considered putting away salt. I never would have considered that I would need it while I was working and sweating off the salt in my body. And here I was an EMT. Been through paramedic school. I knew all the chemistry, but you know, putting salt away just never clicked for a very long time. But now we're getting caught up on it. But let's get into my top 5 uses for salt. Use number 1, food preservation, because salt dehydrates, your meats and whatnot. This particular method has been used for thousands of years. What it does is, osmotic pressure, it pulls the liquid out of the moisture out from the microorganisms, and it also slows the oxidation. Bacteria are microorganisms that need moisture to survive, so when you salt your meats and fishes, at least 20% can be preserved to the point where refrigeration is not needed. It can also be applied to smoked meats and curing meats. Health, in the past, medical experts recommended salt tablets for people out in the wilderness, or anyone sweating profusely. That's not as recommended now. They'll tell you, go drink a Gatorade, get your salts in that way. Even at one time, military units all around the world were issued salt tablets. Iodized salt is actually needed for proper thyroid function. So that's my number 2 is health. My number 3 would be wound skin treatment, believe it or not. Saline, once again, which is nothing more than salt water, is typically used to flush wounds to remove bacteria and to inhibit growth. Take up to 10 grams of salt and mix with 1 liter of water to flush wounds of bacteria and debris that can harbor bacteria. You want the water to be under a slight pressure, so mix the solution in a baggie or soda bottle. Once you have the saline mixed well, puncture a hole in the container and squeeze to create pressure to flush the wound. Once again, salt will draw the moisture from the bacteria, thus destroying it. So it can be used to prevent bacteria growth, and salt can be applied directly to a wound. It will be painful, and it's not recommended. It can be done, but it's not recommended. Use a solution, even soak in a salt bath as opposed to applying it. Some people have had luck treating poison ivy by soaking the affected area in a salt bath. Guys, for me, let's get into home health, and this is for entertainment purposes only, of course, right? Vinegar. I prefer vinegar because what affects the person and actually gives you the reaction to poison ivy is the oil in the poison ivy leaf. Vinegar cuts the oil, gets it off your skin. So, if you want to do salt water, go to it, but I prefer vinegar. Number 4, pest control. Salt is known to repel ants. That can be a problem in a survival situation. You don't want ants getting into your food stores. Some people have had luck by spreading salt around the area you want to keep free, or some have mixed salt and water together and applied it, sprayed it around items, in particular foods, to keep ants at bay. That's all on you. That would be something. of you who are already on your bug out location, already have it set up, are in the process of setting it up, and you have gone to a septic system for your um, potty facilities, your uh, yeah, waste disposal. If you have a pressurized water system, have a system, that you're actually using a flushing toilet. For us, our cabin has a spring tank up the mountain, and it gravity feeds down to the house, and it's just like living in the city on city water. You go in the bathroom, you sit down, you do your thing, you flush, and the toilet paper has to be disposed separately. But we'll talk about refuse disposal at a later time. Once a month, what I will do is I will take a handful of rock salt tablets. They're about yay long, and I will just drop them in the toilet tank. Now they dissolve, they salt the water in the tank, and every time I flush it, or every time there's a little leak around the rubber gasket, that salt water flows into the system. What I have found is that by salting the toilet water, any roots that have managed to get into the piping system to the septic tank, or even into the septic tank, die because of the salt. Been doing that for 20 plus years, and aside from having it pumped occasionally, we've had, part of standard maintenance for a septic system, we've had no issues with the septic. No need to do repairs to it. It's been excellent. So those are my top 5 uses for salt. And I guess my big reasons for prepping buckets of this wonderful stuff. So that's the big one for today. Just wanted to share that with you, which is funny because in a couple of days, or tomorrow actually, this video will be published. And yesterday my friend NWA Prepper did a video about you're going to lose some preps, and he discusses, what happens if the lid's not on tight, it falls over. He lost some salt yesterday or earlier in the week. It's probably out of his bank of videos. So I guess great minds think alike, that we're on the same wavelength about salt today. So thank you for joining me, and I'm looking forward to this weekend and spending it with you as well. You guys have a wonderful week, and we'll see you soon.